Do you ever start a track with the intention of having it dance floor heavy and hard hitting, but when you start adding the melodic elements, the synth, things like that, it ends up going in a different direction and becomes quite floaty and a bit too nice? Well, I had a client that was struggling with just that. I've just finished to check in with them, and I want to break down exactly why it's happening and how you can stop it from happening in your future tracks. Let's get into it. So, I'll start with the original version that I was working on today, and this is what they sent me over. Now, there's nothing inherently bad with this song or anything wrong, but it definitely doesn't have that hard-hitting dance floor feeling. So I'll play it again, but this time, as we get halfway through, I'll flip into my version and show you the more harder-hitting version of it. Into my version. Definitely has a bit of a harder feel to it, has a more rolling feel to it. So let me show you what I've done here to achieve this sound. First things first, I want to get a mistake out of the way that most people make. A lot of people think that it is the synths and the melodics that are making it too floaty. It's actually not, as in this instance, I haven't changed any of the vocals or any of the synths. I've kept them exactly the same. The problem stems from your foundations. I'm going to work from top to bottom through this project now and show you exactly what I've changed. First things first, I noticed that for this more rolling feeling, the kick just was not hard enough. Here's the original kick, and here's mine. You can hear has much more kind of top end in it, has much more click, and that allows it to poke through the mix more, giving us this feeling that it's a lot harder. Again, before, after. Let's play that with the project before, after. I see a lot of people making a mistake of doing a high cut on their kicks like this and taking off the tops. I don't want to see that. Why? Because you're getting rid of everything that gives that kick presence in the mix. That click that you hear on top is not a bad thing. It's actually a very, very good thing. So I'm going to leave the click in there and let it poke through. Next thing I noticed was I started work on the drums, and I'll show you what I did. Let me remove the processing on the drums and show you. Then after processing, much bigger. Now to achieve this more hard-hitting dance floor ready style, we want to make sure that our drums are pushed to their limit. We need to make sure that in your face, we need to make sure that they're really standing up on their own. And as you can hear, the push had enough elements in there. They just hadn't been pushed hard enough. So to process this, what I've done is whacked them into a group. I then put a glue compressor on, going through then into a saturator. When we process things using compression and saturation on groups, it kind of ties everything together. Then I've gone into a FabFilter Pro Q3. Now this is the thing that is changing the sound or the tonal balance of the sound the most. Because if I start showing you this resonance, this one, resonance. So how do we find these resonances? Well, one of my cheat codes is to let the FabFilter Pro Q3 or Pro Q4 do the heavy lifting for us. If I hover the mouse here and leave it playing, you can see it actually starts to give us some problem areas. And here that is quite sharp. Now, when I'm getting rid of this, you want to make sure that you're listening to it in context. I don't want you to be soloing the drums and then doing cuts. You want to unsolo the drums and then start cutting back some of them. And I actually think that did give us quite a nice change. But the key takeaway here is to make sure you listen to it in context of the whole track. You don't want to be making any critical mixing decisions while the solo button is on. Okay? Next up, we've gone into an EQ at the end here. Why? Because we're not going to hear anything above 15k 15k hertz anyway. I'm just going to get rid of them. I treat the top end like I would the low end. You're not going to hear anything below about 20 hertz, sorry. So we usually cut that off, but I see a lot of people neglect the top end as well. These are all just frequencies that are just unnecessary, really. So I've dubbed them off. Maybe I've got a bit too low. Maybe I could push that up to about 20k hertz, something like that, but not going to get into the granular details of it. The only other thing I've changed in these drums is I've done a bit of processing on each of the individual channels. Why? Well, this client had chopped up some top loops to create kind of a vibe. If I show you the top loops. Now, what am I noticing in these tops? Well, they have a hell of a lot of open hat in them, both of them, but we've already done the hard work here. And we've applied our own open hat. We do not want the top loops open hats taking over our predominant main open hat. So what I've done to combat that is actually use Transient Master to bring back the attack. And basically I'm just trying to dull out the transient from the hat so that our open hat has space to breathe. I did originally try side chaining these two loops to the open hat, but it was giving me a bit of a jarring, unprofessional sound. So I just ended up going with some ducking off the transients, essentially taking down the transients so we leave that space for our main open hat to poke through. It's all about leaving space for things. So I think we ended up with an okay result. Watch, if I take off this processing, doesn't have the same vibe. We want it nice and up in our face for these kind of more driving songs, all right? The only other thing I changed was the clap. It was just a case that the sound selection on this clap wasn't doing it. That kind of style of clap there is going to give us a more minimal effect. And remember, we were looking for a more driving feeling. So I swapped it out with a heavy hitting clap that really kind of ties all the drums together. It's really heavy like all of the other drums are. So with the old clap on, you hear just not getting the same effect as. You've got to sit back and really decide when you're sound selecting, really decide what style of song is this. And this song is quite housey. So I'm going to go and reach for a more housey clap, not a snare clap like this. Going to go more classic sounding. By the way, for my sounds that you see me using when I do these tutorials, you can download them for free in the description. That includes all of my kicks, all of my claps, all of my open hats. Why them three? Well, they're the most important parts of any song, right? So it made sense for me to give them away for free. If you want them, there's a link in the description. Moving on. The next thing that was obviously holding this track back was not the synths. Remember that, really drill that home. It's not the synths that were causing the issues or making it floaty. It was the fundamental elements, the drums and the bass line and the kick. So I've got stuck into this bass line a little bit, and actually the original melody went like this. As soon as I saw the MIDI here, I noticed one thing. I noticed that nearly all the notes look like they're kind of bopping along with a 16th note length. Now, for a cool driven bass line, we need some sustained notes. But something needs to be sustained in it in order to achieve a rolling sound. So you'll see, I've got a big, long sustained note in mine. Like that, right? So straight away, I knew I needed to change the bass line. So what I tried to do first was just kind of use the original bass line. I ended up just scrapping it and writing it again. Now let's dig into this bass line a little bit and tell you what my thought process is behind it. Well, for a more driving, rolling song, you're nearly always going to want a close, closed-off loop, a bit more of a closed-off loop, meaning you want maybe a 1-bar loop or a 2-bar loop with your call and response. You probably don't want it stretched over like 4 bars, the call and response, because it just isn't going to achieve that same for part 5. If we go to the original bass line, you can see we've got a call, a response in the 2nd bar, a different call in the 3rd bar, a different response in the 4th bar. That is giving us a bit more of this kind of floaty sound. What I've gone for is a call in the 1st bar, a response in the 2nd bar. That is it. And you'll hear, if I play that with the kick, gives us a bouncy driving feeling. Actually, it's a 1-bar loop. I made a mistake there. You can hear the 1st bar and the 2nd bar are exactly the same. Now, I could get away with having a response here if I give a response in the 2nd bar. could have it ever respond like that, but I think I got away because of the amount of synths and things giving us full response. I got away with having it very tight and loopy over a 1-bar loop throughout the whole project. That is going to give us that rolling vibe that we're looking for, okay? Then, what I needed to change here was the sound design of the bass line in order to get it nice and fat and in your face. So we opened up Serum, and what this client had done, it downloaded a preset from Splice, something that I teach most people to do. Download a preset from Splice, throw it in, so you've got a nice fundamental basis to work from. But I noticed that envelope 1 was assigned to all sorts. It was modulating the cutoff, it was modulating another filter inside of hit in the effects. It was modulating so much or moving so much. And the way I write bass lines is using envelope 2 all the time to assign to things. So I actually ended up just massively simplifying the bass line. You don't need to get too complex with sound design. With envelope 2, as long as we've got like a low sustain, we've assigned it to the cutoff, you're going to get a nice result. Now, the magic of this bass line does cover a lot from the processing. You've seen this done time and time again, probably by now, and it's such a common trend now to put some bit reduction on your bass lines to give us this kind of ring harmonic. Without that, and without the erosion, let's turn the processing off, just doesn't have that current effect. Also, another thing that is making this bass line sound better is that I've got the 7th semitone pitched up on the 2nd oscillator. That is called the perfect 5th. And without that, if I put that down to 0, you hear it doesn't have the same ring to it. Go up by 7. We're putting the perfect 5th in there, which is giving us this nice mid-range tone to the bass line. I've then just simply done some cutoff envelope here. So this outer blue line corresponds to this envelope when I assigned it. And I've just done a very, very simple classic house plucky sound on that cutoff. It's an extremely simple bass line now, but effective. If you can't really jam out to your bass line when it's in solo like this, it's likely not going to sound good with the rest of the project, alright? So just making sure that kick and bass relationship is good, and the way I've done that is by putting a fab filter on the end of the bass line channel and a fab filter on the kick at the end here. Then I can go in to the sidechain down here, I can select the other EQ that's on the kick, and then I can start seeing where we've got some masking frequencies. You see we're getting a glowing red here, so I've simply just ducked down that zone, just allowing the presence to poke through. You will nearly always have that happening between your bass line and kick around the 50 hertz mark. It's a good idea to really check that you're allowing the low end of your kick to poke through. Otherwise, when you get to a club, it will just be like a big wall of noise in your low end, all right? So, very simple processing, but giving us a good effect. If we play all them 3 things together now, we're definitely getting more of a rolling feeling in comparison to this. Simply, all I've done now then is turn back on all of the, I call them interests. In my workflow that I teach, we call these interests. The reason for that is because we don't know if it's going to be a synth, a vocal. We don't know what it's going to be after we've written the bass line. So it doesn't make sense to then limit yourself and pigeonhole yourself saying, okay, I need to add synths next. When I teach clients that they need to write synths next, they box themselves in and end up making really dreamy music. However, this could be vocal chops. This could actually be a percussion loop. You'll see here, actually, they've used a percussion loop to bring interest. Without that, onto the run part here, you'll hear this. So it's not always going to be synths. That's why we call them interests in the workflow that I teach. If you're more interested in learning from me and learning this workflow, getting the quickest way to success, again, check the link in the description and you can work with me one-on-one. So moving on. Now I've just turned on all of the interest layers and you'll see they're exactly the same. as it was in the original version, showing us and proving my point that it's not the interest or synths that you've added that's making it dreamy. Not always, anyway. It's likely your foundations aren't hitting hard enough. Okay? So, the last thing is this pad, and I've left this to last because most people say when they go to add a pad that it makes the song too dreamy. And this is the exact thing that we were trying to overcome during this session. However, notice when I turn this pad on, it doesn't make it too dreamy. So let's imagine the track's been playing for a while. And we're building up into a breakdown in a second, right? Turn the pad on. Still stays very hard hitting in my version, right? It works, that pad. But in this version, it was making it very dreamy. What is that proving yet again? It's proving that it wasn't the pad making your project dreamy. It was your foundations causing that to happen. So what was the point in this tutorial? Well, I'm trying to get across to you that your foundations are by far the most important part of any song. You can't write a good song with bad drums. For example, you could write the best bass line in the world. If it's coupled with bad drums, it's still a bad song. Or you could be absolutely Beethoven and write the sickest melody you've ever heard, yet couple that with a bad bass line, it's still a bad song. Every single aspect of the music making journey needs to be on point for it to become a good song. And if you'd like to learn how to do that, check the link in the description and you can work with me one-on-one. Thanks for watching.